Okay, welcome back. Hope you had a good break. The stragglers are just coming in.
I've been giving all the cars away, sorry, you're a bit late.
You get a car, sorry. Who has an iPhone? Who has an Android? They're all AI enabled right now. I think. I don't know. Was that good one?
That was a good one. We can practice that. You think so?
AI is everywhere. AI is very, very popular right now. And we got someone who knows all about it.
Have you got me instead?
So, Erica is going to tell us about AI as your ally. And I'm very curious. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
There we go.
Thank you. And before we get started, massive thank you and congratulations to Julia and the team. I'm sure everybody would just like a round of applause to say well done for such a great job. I did ask you to do that, by the way. Okay, AI is your ally. Hands up, who wishes their life could be easier sometimes?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes? Yeah, I think pretty much all of us. Who wishes they had someone else who could pick up a task or could pick up the slack? And I don't mean the Slack channel, I mean the extra work. Who wishes they could delegate, they had more FTE, they had more people that they could say, hey, you go and do this in this way, and this is the output I'm looking for. Yeah, I think we're all there. Who wishes they had more time and energy? I'd be surprised if there's not any hands up. Maybe one or two people hands up. God, I wish I didn't have to put my hands up for that. Absolutely. Why am I asking these questions? My name is Erica Farmer. I'm the co-founder and business director of Quantum Rise Talent Group. I'm a professional speaker. I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor. I've been involved with learning and development globally for about 25 years now with some of the UK's largest brands such as British Gas, LV, Specsavers and Virgin. And I'm an average Joe. Does that translate, that phrase, out of interest to an international audience? Who knows what average Joe means? Yeah, Magda.
Just an average person, like on a street person, ordinary one.
Absolutely, someone you'd walk straight past on the street. So I'm not qualified like you guys in Scrum and Agile. I'm not a head of machine learning. I'm not a coder. I'm not a data scientist. I am merely but a trainer. But my life in AI began about 2 years ago, probably a little bit longer than that now, thanks to ChatGPT. Everybody heard of ChatGPT? Also, people are screwing their faces up. I love that as part of this. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll talk about how I got into AI. As part of that, for me, AI isn't about the technology, and that's probably a curse word saying that as in an Agile conference with so many of you guys involved in technology. My interest in this is skills and people. And I think that's part of the reason why I was asked to come and keynote at this conference, because I see AI as your ally. And that's why I asked you the questions that I asked you at the beginning, because I'm not going to start talking to you about process mapping or putting artificial intelligence in your organisation. You guys know that stuff. You're probably having conversations about it all the time. What we're going to explore today is about how AI, artificial intelligence, particularly Gen AI, can make your life easier. And hopefully we'll have a bit of a laugh when we do it too. So, Deloitte said 2024 will be the year we learn to trust our AI colleagues. When you read that, how does it make you feel?
Anxious.
Anxious. How else does it make you feel?
Confused.
Confused.
Where are my AI colleagues?
Yeah, AI colleagues. Where are these colleagues who can pick up all this work, Erica, that you keep talking about?
Skeptical.
Skeptical. Why?
September.
September?
It's September already.
Oh, okay. And I still don't have an AI colleague. Where are these colleagues? Or hopefully you have one after this. Going back to the lady that says skeptical.
Oh, like skeptical
about actually being able to use it in certain work environments?
Yeah, absolutely. So what words stick in your throat? What words stand out for you on that slide? Trust. Why does it stand out for you on that slide?
What they do with data.
Say again?
What are they doing?
What they do with data? Yeah, that's a big question mark, red flag. Because everything you put into OpenAI, ChatGPT is out into the Ethernet, it's not a closed environment, we don't know what's happening, it's like putting something on Facebook, you don't own it anymore. Absolutely. What else?
Reliability of the output.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, we were talking about hallucinations.
Hallucinations, bias. Yeah.
Sometimes it's crap.
Yeah, it is. It can be crap. It can absolutely be crap, and I'd agree with that. It's getting better. It's crap because it's trained on human data. Yeah? It's crap because it scrapes the internet. It's crap because what you put in to a positronic network is what you get out, and it's how you use it. So it's not this magical unicorn. It's not a silver bullet. It's effectively a replication of the human brain. That's what AI is. It's just a machine doing it and a machine learning to learn as it does it as well. There's no kind of magical data set that we don't know about. That's where this stuff comes from. So going back to this piece, absolutely, it's always the word trust and the word colleague that sticks in people's throats. Because how could we have AI as a colleague? That means working with people who aren't people. Right? That's quite a weird concept in itself. So, when I ask you this question, I want you to not think about work, I want you to think about your everyday life outside of work. What are the opportunities to use Gen AI in your day-to-day life? Or do you use it in your day-to-day life? Yes? Love that. Planning the wedding ceremony. You A star for this lady. What else? Yeah.
Planning the workshop.
Planning the workshop. What part of the workshop did you use to plan? What part of the workshop?
The prompt, if you would have the title of the workshop, how would it look like?
Love
And
it.
it gave up some crap, but it gave you an idea where to go.
Love it. Love it.
So planning a family trip for the summer.
Brilliant. Okay. Is this alien to most people of using AI day to day? There's a few good examples that have come up, but we're not really in the habit. We probably go to Google, best case scenario, but it's about understanding how AI can save you time, save you money, save you really, really expensive real estate in here, your thought process, your energy, your time. We've all got a million things going on for us, let alone our emotions and our imposter syndrome and our physical being and human condition and our mental health and our chronic illnesses and our families and our partners and I can keep going, I'm not going to because you'll get sick of the sound of my voice. For me, it's about freeing up headspace. I use ChatGPT several times a day on my phone. I have a chronic illness in regards to fibromyalgia, as well as mental health conditions, as anxiety, as well as ADHD. So you can imagine I don't have a lot of energy because the ADHD burns the hell out of my energy, and I've got fibromyalgia and I sleep a lot at the end of the day. So if I can communicate with something that helps me think in a different way, that becomes a thought partner, a devil's advocate to make decisions, have another way of looking at things if I can't just pick up the phone and speak to my business partner and bounce an idea, it's not a bad thing, right? Certainly isn't in my book. We had a lot earlier about imposter syndrome, so I'm not going to go on too much about it. But I do find when I speak to particularly women, a lot of the research shows us on average, depending on what white paper you're looking at, that 50% of women compared to men are using AI technology currently. So why are men picking up AI and technology in general compared to their counterparts who are female, and I'll put non-binary gender fluid in there as well? Why is only 50% of us picking up this technology? What's going on for us? Why only 50% of women compared to many men using AI? Any thoughts?
AI can't help you with laundry.
AI can't help you with laundry. So certainly the female stereotype and the tasks around the house, I think you probably can do soon. It can certainly build into technology, but yes, you're absolutely right. We're not in the space where we've got robots picking up the laundry off the floor and putting it into the washing machine.
Maybe we don't know how to start.
Starting. So in general, we have less confidence to get started compared to men. So you've probably heard, I'll come to you in a minute, sir, you've probably heard that things like applying for a job, men typically, I think this is data from LinkedIn, men will typically look at a job spec and go, oh, I fit about 70 to 80% of the essential criteria. I'm going to chuck an application in and see what happens. I feel, yeah. Whereas women will sit there and go, oh God, there's 2 or 3 criteria in the desirable section almost that I don't fulfill. Therefore, who am I to apply for that job? And we see the same kind of thinking, those particular who struggle with imposter syndrome when it comes to picking up new technologies like artificial intelligence. But we know it can make your life easier. We've already had some good examples from the group. I've started to share some examples, I'll share some more. But come on, Erica, it's not all like this. We're not sat in our front rooms going, oh, ChatGPT, you're so funny, you're making my life amazing. Does anyone here do that, by the way? No, I didn't think so, and I don't either. But there's ways we can think about it, and we're going to go into a brief history lesson of how we typically deal with technology and change, and what does that mean. But before I do that, sorry, Sarah, you have a point you wanted to raise.
It's right. I think when more men use AI, we use it like another tool.
Another tool,
Real
yeah.
environment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it's a new tool that we can start to use. And we need to shift away from using search engines like Google, which we typically do use, because Google is an advertising platform. Companies like mine pay Google for AdWords and adverts to have my company bumped to the top of the list. So when you search virtual training or leadership and development or AI skills, companies like mine, you'll see Quantumized Talent Group at the top of the group, that's not giving you the actual data that you're potentially looking for, and it's certainly not going to create something for you in terms of new content, whether that's a travel planner, a wedding planner, a video, a picture. This picture, for example, I created this on ChatGPT within a couple of seconds, and I don't have to worry about copyright because I've not nicked something from Google or Shutterstock that we normally do. So there's lots of benefits to be able to do this. So,
I love the extra finger.
yes, and that's back to this lady's point about it's not perfect, it's still a bit crap, right? Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And going back to the bias piece, actually, I don't know if you guys saw a chap called Andrew Jacobs. He's an L&D specialist in the UK, and quite recently he put up a piece on LinkedIn about 6 months ago. He asked ChatGPT, or DALL-E at the time, which is now integrated into ChatGPT, to create an image of a typical boardroom in the UK, a company boardroom. And ChatGPT said, yes, of course, let me scrape all this information that I know about on the internet and from the humankind. What do you think the image looked like that Andrew got 6 months ago? Typical board.
All male.
All male, what else?
White.
All suits. White, what else?
Over 40.
Over, pretty much, you got it. But when he re-put that prompt in, same prompt, when he reworked it, I think probably about 12 weeks ago now, what do you think he saw in regards to this second image that came up? What was the differences, would you say?
They had beards.
They had beards, the beards had grown. there was still a lot of white, male, middle-aged executives in suits. But what else do you think Andrew saw? Or what would you have expected to see at that point?
6 fingers.
6 fingers? No, they didn't have 6 fingers. That was the last image. Anything else? What would you have expected? Machine learning, understanding, growing?
One woman.
Yeah, there was a couple of females, a couple of people of colour. That was pretty much it. So that gives you a good benchmark in terms of bias of where generative AI is right now. And I hear quite a lot in the workshops and the talks that I do that it doesn't work, it's crap, it's bias, it's that. And my challenge is always back, but it comes from people. It's not making this stuff up. Yes, it learns, but it learns from interactions that it has with the internet and humankind. So let's always remind ourselves where this stuff comes from. So, in the UK, about 20 years ago, there was a TV show called Blankety Blank. Does that translate to anybody in the room right now?
No.
I've got one hand up there. Okay, that's fine, I can give you the rules. So Blankety Blank was a Saturday night TV show that was hosted by one of the famous kind of hosts on BBC, and what the contestants had to do was guess the word that was in the blank. So there'd be some words that would come up on the screen, you would read the words, and then you would write down what you think the missing word is. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so we're going to have a game of Blankety Blank right now. So you can either come up with the word in your head, or you can write it down, whatever you'd like. But I'm going to put something on the screen, I'm going to read it out, I want you to think about what the missing word is, and then I'm going to ask you to shout it out. Is that alright? Everyone alright with that? A bit of interactivity? Okay, so, early 20th century educators believed that blank would render our brains useless, unable to perform simple mental calculations. University professors were forming protests, prophesying the fall of society. And bearing in mind we're talking about technology here. Write down the word, or think about what you think is in your head. I will count to 3, I want you to shout it out. 1, 2, 3. Calculator, I'll take the last one, absolutely, calculator. But we have them in our pockets in the form of smartphones. But back then, people were prophesying the fall of society as we know it, because we couldn't do mental calculation in our heads. Some of us can, some of us can't, but it's about freeing up that real estate, freeing up that headspace, and having technology that can help us do it. So let's think about the next one. When the printing press was invented, there was a genuine fear that easy access to blanks would make us lazy, undermine the church, and corrupt the young. The printing press led to an explosion of knowledge and education, and blanks became a beloved source of wisdom. It's the same word. Write it down or think about it. 1, 2, 3. Books! Absolutely. And it sounds ridiculous when you hear these kind of things of how people panicked, how society behaved, when actually there's things that we don't even pick up anymore because it's gone forward, we've leapfrogged with technology. And I like to think that AI is still going to be in this camp. But do you know what? You've got to get over some stuff if you do want to adopt the use of artificial intelligence, make it your ally, and make your life easier. Bit of a trigger warning coming, okay? So I'm not going to give you an operations manual on how to use AI. I'm not going to download a PDF to you after attending this course to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's how ChatGPT is going to make your life easier. The reason I'm not going to do that is because things change in this world, as you guys know, so quickly, and you log on to ChatGPT and there's another update, and another update, and another update. It's moving phenomenal pace. And what I say is there's no silver bullet, there's no right or wrong, there's no way that you should be using artificial intelligence. Caveat that with, you wouldn't want to go and put your date of birth, your sensitive data, your organisation's client data, anything sensitive, don't put it into ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, as you might as well go and stick it all over Facebook. So, that's what my trigger warning is. The thing that stops people starting with new technology, or we can think emotionally as a human race, is what? Fear. Absolutely, thank you very much. So as a species, we go through these doomsday type thoughts when we hear something for the first time, particularly when it comes to change in technology. We've had people talk about the Kubler-Ross change curve. We've had some great stuff on NLP and taking people with you. But the thing about artificial intelligence is we've been brought up, I'm 43, so I was brought up in the 80s and 90s, with movie franchises like The Terminator, where Skynet becomes self-aware and takes over the world, and we all kind of go through Judgment Day. The Matrix, which is also about artificial intelligence, and a bunch of other movies. So we have this scare factor of phrase, artificial intelligence, which we've kind of had hammered into us as part of that. So it makes the fear gap even bigger for us to cross. I was talking to my mother about this, and she said to me, Erica, this artificial intelligence thing, I've seen it on the news, it really scares me. I said, what is it about it, Mum, that scares you? And she said, I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but I'm petrified of it. Okay, and many people sit within that camp. We know knowledge is power, and using it is power, and fear is going to stop us doing that. So, hands up, who here have children in the age range of about 10 to 16? Okay, about half the group. Let me phrase this right. Whose children are using ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot on their phone, if they have a phone? Yeah. So those people who just put their hands up before, and assuming your kids have a smartphone, they will be using ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot on their phone. And one thing I would ask you to do, if you haven't gone in and checked that with your kids, or you don't have access to their phone, or you don't have this conversation, go home and ask them, do they have ChatGPT or an AI app on their phone? Because I pretty much, if I was a betting woman, would say that they do. Yeah.
There's ChatGPT in Snapchat.
Snapchat, there you go, and most kids use Snapchat now, right? There you go, so it's already integrated into common. It's in Google, you've got Google Gemini that's just launched, that started talking to people, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Facebook, you've got Snap, pretty much most of these apps that everybody is using on smartphones will have an element of artificial intelligence. So that means data gathering. That means, that long thing that we never read and we tick the box at the end of it, go, yeah, that's fine, do what you want with my data. That will be about how AI technology is managing and holding your data. So there is a need to be concerned, but what I'm saying is you do need to cross the fear gap with your kids and with your stakeholders and with anybody else. And that means you can use it on a day-to-day basis. Who here suffers from what I call AI guilt? Everybody else is using it all the time and I don't use it. Anybody have the guilt of not using AI? Everybody here uses AI? Anybody have the guilt of not using AI? Good, okay. Or a few people are, maybe. Sometimes it can feel like everybody else is doing that, or we could call it the AI shame. Everybody else is using AI and I'm not using AI and I should be using AI and I don't know what to do with it. And that then sows seeds of doubt in regards to, well, if they're using it, what should they be using it for? What should I be using it? And actually, if I'm not using it, does that mean I'm not very good? And then we go back into that imposter syndrome conversation that we had earlier. Who here has associated or heard about AI and, say, cheating? So, maybe plagiarism at universities, educational establishments, that kind of stuff. What kind of things are we picking up there in the education area and AI? What kind of things are you hearing?
Writing essays.
Essays, so just sticking it into ChatGPT and saying, right, off you go, and then submitting something that's been created by AI. The Turnitin software, yeah, absolutely. The problem with that is, as soon as it captures the AI becomes more quicker. It becomes more clever. And actually, there's a lot of research to say that it has a lot of false positives. So it's picking up stuff that's not actually written by AI. So students are getting reprimanded when they haven't actually used AI. So we've kind of gone full circle. So there's software out there that's being developed, but the problem is it becomes defunct very quickly, or it has too many false positives. Anything else around education and AI?
Research.
Okay, as in
you need a lot of source material when you do research.
Yeah.
You just let AI find the research.
Absolutely. So using it for things like being a thought partner, for research, for ideas, for pros and cons, for checking things is all okay. And most university establishments across the world, I'm pretty sure in Europe at least, I know for sure the majority in the UK have something like a RAG status, which is very clear, and it's part of your code of conduct as a student that says, these pieces of work, red flags, you cannot touch anything when it comes to generative AI, and you will be scored in that way. So examples being in-person assessment. You know, this is you are going to come and talk to your lecturer, and you will be questioned around whatever this piece of knowledge is. And then you've got the amber that says we can do some research, but that's really good for time saving. Anybody here use Gen AI for research just in general in their life? Probably for wedding, probably for travel planning. Brilliant, probably one of the best tools ever. And you can ask it in the way that you would like it delivered in terms of the output, what it needs to ignore, what it needs to focus on, all that kind of good stuff. You know, you don't need to be doing this stuff on Google anymore, it takes far too long. And then you've got your green flag stuff, so stuff that you can, you know, use AI in any way that you want. And actually, in some education establishments, it's actually really positive if you do use technology in that way, because you're developing your confidence, your digital skills, your skills of the future, your readiness for the workforce. So fear is the blocker to stuff is, sometimes we call it cheating, and it's not actually cheating. So let me give you an example of how good this stuff is. And I didn't submit this, by the way. But one of the first things I did when I got access to ChatGPT is I asked it to write an excerpt of my dissertation from 24 years ago when I went to university. And I spent weeks and weeks and weeks hungover in my bedroom as a student trying to get the honours, my honours degree. And this was the title that I put into it. So I wanted to write an extra of a degree dissertation about the subculture of a women's football team. At university, football team must cover topics such as sexuality, hierarchy, socialising, singing songs, power, resources, captainship, blah, blah, blah. So this is what I got. Okay, so it gave me an introduction. It gave me kind of the overview of the chapters, the topics, the things I should be covering, my role as the captain, what does that mean in the emergence of my leadership style and all that kind of stuff, bonding, lesbian relationships, chants, songs, heterosexuality, homosexuality, power dynamics. And I was like, oh my God, I covered all of this stuff in my dissertation, and it actually took me about 6 weeks to write, and it came up with this within seconds. Gender, power, negotiation, how the people in the team negotiate which positions they want to play, who's going to wash the kit at the end of the game, and then the conclusion. And it literally came up with this within seconds. So you can understand why people get concerned about cheating, but boy, I wish this was available 23 years ago when I wrote my dissertation. And do you know what? I said thank you, and it actually said, you're welcome, good luck. You know, good luck in writing your dissertation. So it's even got that kind of persona, and this is where you can start to really use it to make your life easier. Now, what I'm not condoning is cheating through job applications, or if you write research, or if you submit papers. What I am condoning is you can use it as a thought partner, you can support your headspace, you can support your time and energy and all that stuff that we talked about earlier. So, I've talked about this already. About half of the women regularly using large language models compared to men. But women are ideally placed to make the most out of the fourth revolution, out of using artificial intelligence. We are 51% of the population for a start, so let's get rid of that figure. But why are we as women, gender fluid, non-binary people, why do I say that? Why are we well positioned to take artificial intelligence and shape it for humankind? Because that's what I'm kind of talking about here. It's a big question, isn't it? Why women? Why do I think that?
I think women are more thinking about something, what make the best of it, and try something out.
Okay.
It's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and very valid, thank you. Absolutely, this is opinion-based, absolutely. Magda?
I was thinking about having a broad perspective so we
Yeah.
can teach it more and not just ask for questions, but actually give more context situation-based and then feed it more information as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So feed it more information, context-based, yeah.
And if men are primarily using it, then what we're putting into it is...
There you go.
And so we're going to receive a male perspective.
There you go. Thank you so much. All of those answers are really valid, but yeah, absolutely. So when we do say it's bias, it's crap, it's doing this right now, but it's, giving us he rather than she or they or whatever it might be, we've kind of got a responsibility to deal with that, just like the piece around sustainability, shaping it for the future. And I really want you to go away from today and be inspired by what this means. Do you know, also we're really good at storytelling as women. We're really good at making things relevant and being engaging. And I'm not saying men aren't. I'm not comparing men and women here. What I'm trying to say is let's put that new box in place that we can all look over the fence that some of us can't at the moment. That's called equity, isn't it? And actually, what does that mean from a technology perspective? So things like bringing emotion into things. And you'll see the difference with generative AI, even from a couple of months ago. It's quite emotional the way it can talk to you now. I don't know if you've tried ChatGPT recently, particularly when the voice is on the phone, it can be really conversational. It can flex and adapt to a different audience, and we need to be responsible to step into a space to train the artificial intelligence to be able to do this, because this stuff isn't going away. So going back to my story, how did I get involved in AI, which I kind of started this with, and I haven't told you about yet, is I'm kind of the person who, if you tell me not to do something, it's like a red rag to a bull. I'm the kind of person, go on, tell me if I can't do it, and I can do it. I might take a while, I might find my own way of doing it, but I need to achieve. So I said to my business partner, Hayley, we need to learn about artificial intelligence because we're in the digital edge tech space from a learning company perspective. And she said, Erica, how are we going to do that? We can't go on to degrees, we can't take time to business, we can't go on 12-week courses, we don't really know anybody who's an AI. Let's fine. Let's start a podcast. And that's what we did. So episode 1, we'd only looked into ChatGPT a couple of times, and we self-taught and we learned AI, and we recorded it at the same time, we gave it some narrative, and we started putting it on YouTube. And that started becoming AI for the average Joe. This is the podcast. And the amount of people that, particularly females, have said to me, it's brilliant. I would never have got involved in using AI for personal tasks, let alone work tasks. But I can, and it's recorded like a vlog, like a little show. I work along ChatGPT with you and Hayley talking about how to use it. So it was a self-learning type approach. And these are the kind of things we started talking about, using it as a content creator, using it as a thought partner, a scheduler and planner, a data summarizer, a learning coach. And I was kind of in my objective, business-like way of talking about this, and Hayley went, but Erica, people aren't going to connect with this on a human level. What can we do to make it human? She said, give me the weekend to think about it, and I'll come back to you and we'll record the next episode of the podcast on Monday. I said, right, you got a deal. So on the podcast episode 2, Hayley talks about, it was absolutely tipping it down on Sunday afternoon. The rain was really heavy, like it is often in the UK. The kids were driving me crazy, and I thought, what can I do to keep the kids entertained? I know what, I'll go onto ChatGPT, I'll give it a prompt to write a treasure hunt. You know, when you've got things for the kids to find with little clues around the house. I'll print out all the treasure hunt clues that ChatGPT created, I'll cut them up and I'll put them around the house. I said, that's brilliant. And I said, but Harry's 5, and, Izzy's 7. So how did you do that in terms of comprehension? She said, well, I went back onto ChatGPT, and I said, write it for a 5-year-old and write it for a 7-year-old, and then I got the clues again. And then I cut it up, and then I put it around the house. I said, what would that have taken you in terms of time to sit and think about that or Google that to create that? And she said, probably a day with my headspace and everything else. And I probably would never have got around to it. So when you're connecting with technology like this, make it relevant, tell stories, be emotional, entertain the kids with it. The best thing I've ever heard in one of my workshops is someone said, I've got the in-laws from hell. My partner's mother and father are a nightmare to buy Christmas presents from. So what I do now is I go onto ChatGPT, give it a prompt, it gives me a list of stuff I can buy. Lazy? I don't know, you decide. Saving time and energy and headspace, 100%. Travel planner we've talked about, doing a monthly budgeting. My mum will sit down and write down on an Excel spreadsheet how much she spent, where's the receipt, how much she got left. This can do that for you. one of the things I love about ChatGPT and generative AI is I've got a bookshelf full of books that I've never read, but I think they look pretty, and I've always wanted to read Sun Tzu's Art of War. So then I asked ChatGPT to give me the top 10 points out of that book, and I feel like I've read it. Aside, lazy, I don't know, you decide. But there's different ways that you can free up your time and energy and headspace to use this stuff. And then you can work on skills that are going to help you become more competitive in the workplace, and I call them human distinctive skills. Things like creativity, clear expression. We've heard a lot about that today. We're very good at kind of dancing around each other and not saying what we really want and what we really think from people. We need to get better at that because that wastes a lot of time. Critical thinking, solving big problems, all the stuff that you guys do in scrums, using Agile in organisations, learning agility. So I don't need all this knowledge anymore that's been stuck in my head. That's my power and my resources. And I'm in learning and development, so I've got to be careful here. Actually, I don't need all this stuff anymore. Let me put that down, it's taking up headspace. This is the stuff I need to use now. And it's how quickly you can apply new skills in record time. That's learning agility, you can work on that. And applying context, because AI cannot do that at the moment. It has no soul, it has no motivation. It goes off what people feed it. That's currently the situation when it comes to AI. So how do you get started with all this, Erica? Let's go practical before we start to wrap up. Make a list of tasks that either you've been meaning to do, that will make your life easier, that will make your work life easier, that will get your partner off your back, or get your kids off your back, whatever it might be. It might be start the Christmas present list, whatever it is. List what you need to do to get to the output. So you need to go shopping, you need to go budgeting, you need to find where the shops are, the kids need to tell you what, etc., etc., etc. And then build it out with creativity and agility and problem solving and all the stuff only the human intelligence can do, because the machine intelligence can't do that stuff. So it's not about AI taking your job. It's not about someone who knows how to use AI to take your job. It's about using it as an assistant, delegating it as freeing up your headspace, freeing up your energy, making your life easier, empowering yourself, getting involved, supporting others, supporting your parents, your colleagues, your kids, your friends, whoever it might be. Fostering that culture of using AI as your colleague, your friend, your assistant, whatever word you want to put on that. And you might not be comfortable with some of those, and that's okay, that's up to you to choose what you do. But we talked about growth mindset, and there'll be some things today I've said that have probably jarred with some of you a little bit, but I want you to go away and think and reflect and think, oh, why do I feel that way about change or technology or AI? Or using it in my personal life, or whatever it might be. Support yourself and support other people to get involved, because AI is not going away. It's going to be one of the biggest changes we see certainly in our lifetime. And you know, with the kids coming into the workforce now, they are already digital natives. So there's people you will be working with in your organisations or your own children who will be using this as part of what they do already. Don't get left behind. And dream big. What can you really do in your life to make you happier, to give you more time with your family, to be the person you want to be, to exercise more, whatever it might be? Think about what that is and what your dream is and how you can achieve it if you just outsource some of the day-to-day stuff that's taking up that headspace energy and time. And you know what? When I was speaking to the team at Agile, Women in Agile Europe, and they asked me about what I was going to talk about in AI, I said there's got to be about women and allyship and imposter syndrome and some of the stuff that's going to fit the rest of the day. But I would be an absolute hypocrite if I didn't use ChatGPT to start thinking about that as well. So this is the prompt that I put in to get ready for this talk. Have I cheated? I don't know. You decide. You judge me on that. But I'm certainly always going to walk the walk as well as just talk the talk. So these are some of the things I've covered in this talk. I've decided that I didn't want to cover all that stuff, but it's certainly given me things to think about when I was prepping for this session. And actually, this is what I thought today would look like. This is my preemption, asking ChatGPT of what our session would look like today. So that's going to be me in the middle. So as you can see, it's not quite there yet. So the best piece of advice I can give you, just to wrap up, is just do it. Just get involved. Yeah, it might feel a bit weird, it might feel a bit different, there might be things that I've said to you today that are going to stick in your throat and jar. Go and have a conversation with your kids, go and have a conversation with your friends, and just try something different and do something new. Thank you very much.
How about that? Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'll come over.
So when you say that we have to train ChatGPT,
I'm sorry?
to train ChatGPT, for example, to train AI?
To train the AI or train AI skills?
So to train ChatGPT to be more inclusive or that depends on the questions we ask.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so machine learning and generative AI constantly builds on the input you're giving it. You can put in custom instructions, so it always does things a certain way that you want it. It scrapes the internet. It's got billions of training points which are being updated constantly. And that's why you see so many updates and different versions of ChatGPT landing, because it's growing and growing, its training points are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yes, that's machine learning. Hence why we have a responsibility to train it on the right stuff, right? Yeah, great question. Yeah.
Can I add here? I just want to add here that when you train ChatGPT, sometimes it gives you the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And if you tell him, like, this is the correct answer, please memorize it, and it will say memory updated.
Love that.
What I did with my company, for example, I said I had a separate window only related to my company, and another chat related to my personal stuff. So for my company, I actually written the mission, the vision, the values, and I said, please remember this. And it will then know them for my future questions or whatever help I need. So I think this is a good exercise to give him information and tell him to remember it. So it's a good practice.
Great example, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great example of taking responsibility for its training data as well. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of different AI tools out there now.
Yeah.
Which one would you recommend? I think there's also a new one called Jeremy, if I remember correctly.
There's tons, and they're growing day to day.
Yeah. What are your top ones that you would recommend using?
It's difficult because with any technology, you can see so many startups, right? And people bring stuff to market really quickly, and I'm always a bit skeptical of that because people say, oh, it's going to do all this now, solve all your problems that ChatGPT can't, and then suddenly they've gone bankrupt the next day because they can't get the investment of the seed funding and stuff like that. I don't just talk about ChatGPT for novelty. I really think it's brilliant. For what I do in the professional speaking space and the learning and development HR space, it pretty much does everything. You can get specific large language models for HR, but I don't think they do anything different to what something like ChatGPT would. And it's partly only on Microsoft, so there's kind of responsibility in a way there as well. So that's probably a long way of saying ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini would be my top three. They're all kind of quite broad range in terms of what they do things slightly differently, but like anything, it's all about the quality of the ask, of the prompts that you give it. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The talk that we had prior to this was about sustainability, and one of the things that I've heard about AI is that it takes up a lot of data and energy to kind of be training these large language models. So I guess what are your thoughts on being a user of AI, and does that kind of have a negative impact on these kind of questions that we were asking earlier?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I constantly have conflict because to create an image like I showed you uses 50 times the amount of water to just cool down the servers at OpenAI than it does to create a text-based response. So there is that kind of how much energy and water am I using just to create a novelty image versus something else. That sticks with me because I was a vegan, sustainability is important, I do what I can in that space. I guess I've kind of reconciled all of that with, so one of the podcast episodes is from the Institute of Analytics, where they do a lot of research around this stuff to make people aware. but also, as humankind, this is going to be a big answer, right? As humankind, we are not at the moment going to be able to solve climate change and global warming. So we need something to help us solve, which is probably the biggest existential crisis we are ever going to, we're going to lose where we live, effectively. So I kind of, in my head, not everybody would agree with this, think it's worth investing in training in AI if it will get to the point where it's able to help us solve those kind of problems. So it's a big non-practical conceptual answer, but that's kind of where my thinking is on it. But there's a lot more research around energy and water usage and that kind of stuff for sure. Yeah. Great question.
Is there any way people can get in touch with you to ask questions?
Of course, absolutely. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, Erica Farmer. Quantum Rise Talent Group is the company. AI for the Average Joe is on YouTube, free for anyone to go and watch. We've got downloadable blogs and resources on the website. If you have a need in your organisation, really happy to talk about that and support that as well. So yeah, get in touch if you've got any questions or queries. Probably LinkedIn is probably easiest.
Great. I'll give her a non-artificial hand.